Will, it was the day we talked to you, and then later that night, Wilson Contreras broke his arm after trying to, of course, reach to frame a strike, and then he catches the bat of JD Martinez, and just a really unfortunate situation for Contreras, as now he has a broken arm, had surgery almost immediately afterward, and is out for maybe a couple of months here. So what's kind of the status that you're looking at for Wilson Contreras with him trying to heal up from that, and just the situation that catchers these days are in when they're trying to make strikes as good as possible?
Exactly. Let's talk about because there's three things I want to talk about this one. The injury is the easiest one. It's a broken arm. It's going to heal. It was a little out of alignment. I mean, when you think about the bone, it can crack but not move. It can move a little bit, or you can have a crazy one that sticks out through the skin. That's bad. This one, it just moved a little bit. When you think about how hard a bat is moving, and heck, we just got all that bat data this week from MLB to tell us just how fast things are moving. Something that's probably moving at 75 to 80 miles an hour smacks you in the arm. Bad things happen. And it's just unfortunate. But the interesting thing is we have data on this now. And Contreras is one of the most forward positioned catchers there are. He takes the ball more than receives the ball. It used to be we were always taught, you just kind of cushion the ball. Now you're reaching forward. JD Martinez is one of the guys who positions himself the farthest back. You'll see guys by the end of that first inning, that back line is gone. Guys are scooting back, especially with the velocities we're seeing. So it was just one of those confluence of circumstances. You take a guy that gets that far back, you have a guy like Contreras who gets that far forward. This almost seems inevitable. And the fact that we have data to see that, maybe we can prevent it. Maybe we can see, hey, when, this guy in the back and that guy who moves forward, maybe you should warn the catcher, or maybe the catcher should say to the umpire, hey, he's getting a little close here. What do you want to do? So I think there's ways we can do that. The second is, this is an interesting problem in that we don't see this happening very much. Is it because we mostly have catchers poking forward that are trying to frame the ball? And if so, does this go away in 2 years when we stop having framing? Umpires say they aren't fooled by this, but if that was the case, catchers wouldn't keep doing it. This does work. There's a proven value to it. But once the automatic ball and strike system that they're already using in AAA comes in at the major league level, framing doesn't matter at all. You see catchers down in AAA still doing it because they need that skill at the next level. But I think it's going to completely change things, both in terms of how you catch back there and who you put back there. If the framing skill goes away, do you put a guy who's maybe not that good a receiver that has a strong arm to get the runners? Do you put a guy who has a better bat but isn't a very good defensive catcher back there? So I think it's going to absolutely change the game when Manfred next changes the game.
And it's really interesting to think about, Will, because in Wilson Contreras' cage, he basically already said, look, I'm going to come back and continue doing what I was doing because it's made me more valuable to the Cardinals. But the other value that he brings to the Cardinals is he's really been their only hitter who has been producing. So that's also been kind of a fine line to walk, I guess.
It is, and that's going to be the interesting thing, because he could probably come back faster if he comes back just as a DH. And, you think about that, and you're like, no, we want him back as a catcher. No, you want him back as a hitter. If he can come back in 6 weeks as a hitter, but he can't catch until a couple weeks after that, great. The guy's actually been hitting. Assuming he comes back and can hit, there's no reason that a broken arm would prevent that once it's healed up. You absolutely want him there because, heck, they use, even with Contreras down, they still used Ivan Herrera as a DH a couple games ago. So absolutely you want Contreras back. The other thing, and this has to be taken in context because the Cardinals offense is bad. Don't get me wrong. But when you look into, I think I saw that like the entire league was hitting 233. It's historically low. The on-base percentage, historically low. The slugging percentage, pretty close to historic lows. Pitchers are winning. Flat out, pitchers are winning, and we've got to figure that out before we figure anything else out. For Contreras, absolutely, he's got to come back and do what he does. But, you're absolutely right in that he's got to hit too.
Interesting conversation there. And you mentioned pitching. The Cardinals have had decent enough pitching this year, but one spot they have not been able to figure out yet is the Steven Matz spot in the starting rotation. They initially hoped he would be out just a couple of weeks with the back issue, but then this week he has an injection in that back and is going to be shut down for another week. What do you make of his situation and sort of what he's been with the Cardinals since he got there a few years ago? Because I would say at this point, the team is probably disappointed in the production they're getting.
Yeah, I mean, just the availability. This is a guy who, at the back end of the rotation, you want a guy who's going to take the ball every fifth day, who's going to put up, league average numbers. He's going to give you a chance to win if the offense hits well. He keeps you in a game, those kind of things. And we've had those kind of guys at the back end of rotations for years. I mean, I think back to Randy Wolf. He's the epitome of that kind of league average pitcher. And sadly, they're expensive these days. So Matz just hasn't been able to get it done. Part of that is you've got to pick the right guys. And that was really kind of the danger this year with the free agent heavy roster. Did you pick well? You can't have a 50% hit rate when 4 of your starters are guys who you're bringing in, when there's just nothing coming behind them. Tank's coming, but he's not there yet. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this holds up. But with Matz, it's unfortunate, but it's common. We're seeing this more and more. I was talking to a doctor yesterday. He thinks it's the pitch clock, believe it or not. He says we're seeing more and more back injuries. It's getting to be like cricket, where the forces, we're seeing it in the hamstrings, we're seeing it in the groins, we're seeing it in the lower back. They're just taking more force because the arm is putting so much force on there. You're not getting the time to recover between pitches. You're not getting the same time to recover between innings. Even though you're not going that far, you're still seeing these guys break down under the workload.
Will Carroll, the injury expert here on the Big Show, KTGR and KTGR.com. So we'll see if the Cardinals will get Steven Matz back so he can try to produce more for them at any point. They're also hoping to get Tommy Edman back. Yeah, they haven't had him all season long. As he's had a few setbacks here and there with his rehab from the wrist injury. It seems, though, Will, that in the past week or so, he's made a little bit of progress and had some soft toss earlier last week, maybe swinging the bat a little bit more. What do you think about the timeline for him, as the Cardinals obviously had to be a little more patient with him than previously expected?
Well, there's a couple things that are going on. First, after he had that setback and went and had another injection and kind of got the confidence back that the surgery wasn't a bust, things have been going well. The problem was he's on the 60-day IL, so he can't come back before, I want to say, May 27th. So what he does here on May 14th doesn't matter. He's still got 2 weeks before he can come back. So they've been really, really slow with him because they don't want him to have a setback. They don't want him to get going and hit full speed for the next 2 weeks when it doesn't count. So he's taking soft toss. He's going to get on a tee sometime this week. Live pitching is going to come shortly after that. So I think they're going to get him to the point where they know whether or not he can handle live hitting. The minute they do that, they send him to Memphis. They send him to Springfield. He takes 2 or 3 games to figure out whether his swing is there, like they did with Notebar, and then he's back. So they're not risking it. I'm not sure I love this idea. I would rather have the setback now where you could readjust if that happens, but they seem confident it's not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see if he's able to take that progression and maybe find his way back at some point. As far as other guys across the league, Will, of course, whenever Shohei Ohtani is dealing with some sort of injury, the league definitely takes notice, and he was out of the lineup a couple of days ago with some back tightness. Didn't seem that it's anything at least serious at this point, but with a player like Ohtani, everyone does get a little more on edge when he deals with something. How do you kind of see that situation with the Dodgers there, Will?
Yeah, he swings real hard. So he has had issues with his back and with his side. Nobody will say oblique, but hey, that's on the side. So he just swings out of his shoes, man, and that's why the ball goes so far. So this is going to happen now and again, especially as he ages. He is a very big guy, which you don't see guys in context very much. If you saw him next to Trout, maybe you didn't get it because Trout's huge too. But when you see him next to Mookie Betts, you get kind of the idea. Mookie Betts is a normal human size. And you see, and a really good baseball player. Ohtani's ridiculously big for a baseball player. He's not Aaron Judge big, who is, aside from football linemen. But it's just one of those things where you put that much force on something, something's going to give every now and again. It's not going to be serious, but you miss him for a couple of games. There is a value to that, though. The Dodgers certainly have talent to pick it up.
Will Carroll, the injury expert here on the Big Show, KTGR and KTGR.com. We were all captivated this weekend by Paul Skeens' MLB debut with the Pirates, with how hard he was throwing, first of all, and secondly, how he was able to get the swing and miss pretty well. Everything that you thought Paul Skeens would be able to translate to the league so far in Game 1?
Yeah, I mean, that's everything the game of baseball wanted. Here's a guy throwing 101 miles an hour. It's nearly a mile an hour faster than anything you threw in the minors. So, yes, adrenaline is real. Did he have his best control and his best stuff? No. I've seen him 3 times live now. Well, he was in AAA, and he's better than that. It's crazy to say, but he's better than that. He'll hit his spots. The guy really does. He's not just a hard thrower. He's got a couple pitches. He really understands what he's doing out there. He's not going to go deep into games. The Pirates just aren't going to let that happen. I thought it was very courageous of the general manager, Ben Cherington, to say, we don't know what we're doing with him. We're guessing. We're trying our best. We're listening to people, but nobody has any idea how to do this. So why do you think we have some magical plan for him? But he handled it well. He kept the team in the game. He's the most excitement they've had. And, Livy Dunn showed up. So Rob Manfred's got to be just screaming like a giddy little schoolgirl at the money they're going to rake in. And now the question is, we've got a nickname for Skeens and Jones in the Allegheny Electric Company. We've got exciting young guys around the league. Can they turn this into something? Will Nutting actually spend some money? I thought it was intriguing. At Steven Strasburg's premiere, the leadoff hitter was Andrew McCutchen. And for Skeens' debut, the leadoff hitter was Andrew McCutchen. So good career for McCutchen. But it kind of shows just how often when we say once in a generation pitchers, sometimes we overdo it. We certainly overdo it when we say greatest of all time, but these don't happen very often. You think back, Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor, Steven Strasburg, Paul Skeens. These are the ones you're going to remember. These are the grandkid stories.
Will Carroll, the injury expert here on the Big Show, KTGR and KTGR.com. Now, Will, we don't ask you too much about NBA, but these playoffs that have gone on over the last month or so, a lot of the storylines have been about maybe who isn't playing as opposed to who is, who's available, who's healthy, things of that nature. I wonder, maybe not even specific to any other team, even though the Knicks certainly have plenty of injuries themselves, but just in general, how you've seen this league kind of weather that, especially in context of earlier this year implementing those playing time requirements for so many players.
Bingo. That's it, Andy. I'll give a big shout out to my friend Jeff Stotts. He's on X as in street clothes and does some of the best work in the NBA. I don't do the NBA because I don't want to compete with him. But watching the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton looks just gassed. The Knicks are down to they might have to suit up Jalen Rose or something. It's just awful how many of their good players are down. The Pacers got to this round because Giannis Antetokounmpo didn't make it that far. He was injured. Lillard was injured during the series and was a shell of himself when he did play. So the whole load management rules, this is a failure, and Adam Silver needs to figure this out quickly because this is what you're seeing. The older players, those superstars like LeBron James and Steph Curry, not even in the playoffs because they couldn't stay healthy enough. The people around them couldn't stay healthy enough. You see young guys like Giannis and Lillard. You see Jokic worn down. You see Luka Doncic. these guys are playing at probably 80% of capacity because they had to play so hard and so often during the season. They had this in-season tournament, which I thought it was good, but it's more workload on them. So they turned load management into this negative term when in fact it's by this point, we'd like to see the best players playing at their best. So we need to manage their workload throughout the year. They weren't sitting just because we want to make everybody angry that you bought a ticket. They're sitting out because you can't handle the workload over the long season and then the long playoffs. Adam Silver's got to figure this one out. He doesn't get much wrong. This one he did.
Will, what's new and under the knife these days?
No basketball at under the knife, but covering all these injuries, talking about back injuries, talking about, I mentioned it briefly, but this new bat tracking data that MLB has put out is absolutely fascinating. We have no idea how to do this, but it's stunning to me how much new data has come in. We talk about guys like Kerry Wood. We don't have the kind of spin data or, movement data from his 20 strikeout game that we will from every pitch Paul Skeens makes from this point. How much data we've got is something I've been talking about over probably the last 2 weeks as we try to figure out this new bat tracking data.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We'll see where it goes over the next year or so. So go and check that out, undertheknife.substack.com, to read Will Carroll's great insights when it comes to Major League Baseball injuries, and go and follow him on Twitter at Injury Expert as well. Will, thanks for coming on the show as always. Hope you're well. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, boys.